Hello all, it's week 11, and this week we're going to talk about creative contexts, or the ways in which spaces and places either facilitate or stifle our creative processes. Our focus on space this week fits well with Creativity Quest 3, where you're working in groups to pitch and design a new creative, innovative space on campus, specifically to support MSU students working on entrepreneurial projects. In this video, I'm going to continue talking about MSU's entrepreneurial ecosystem and share 2 updates on projects happening through MSU. Then I'm going to talk a bit about MSU spaces and resources available to support your entrepreneurial work before we move beyond and off campus to look at a couple other spaces. I'll also introduce in this video our week 11 readings, cases, and sparks. In our week 5 overview video, I talked about MSU's development of an entrepreneurial culture. I want to update you on our work and suggest how you can get further involved and leverage the resources we've built. I mentioned during week 5 that the provost hosted an entrepreneurship roundup in spring 2014. In fall 2017, there was a second roundup. June Uat, who was our provost at the time, acknowledged the hard work people had done in developing the initiative, creating a strategic vision, hiring Neil Kane as our inaugural Director of Entrepreneurship and Innovation, and launching the undergraduate minor. She also said that we have a lot more work to do. There were 2 presenters at the roundup presenting on MSU entrepreneurial projects, and the first was Lori Thorpe, director of the RISE program. That's the Residential Initiative on the Study of the Environment, and she talked specifically about the Bailey Tea Project. Students grow herbs and make tea. Prior to the pandemic, it was sold at the Kellogg Hotel Conference Center and around campus. They've developed a business model and moved forward with land grant goods. I usually have boxes of land grant goods tea in my office to share with and show off for visitors to MSU.
Land Grant Goods is a student-run business that sells value-added agriculture products that are grown and produced by students on Michigan State's campus.
Being an entrepreneur to me is really special because it's kind of a track where I am making my own impact, and things that I believe in and things that I value are things that are instilled into Land Grant Goods. So when I talk about creating the next generation of food activists, I'm doing that through my entrepreneurism. I really value that. The Raspberry Jammer was basically acquired in collaboration between Land Grant Goods, the RISE program, the Residential Initiative on the Study of the Environment, and Spartan Innovations. It's a certified food kitchen, and that's where we do all of our processing, blending, and drying for Land Grant Goods. But it's also open to other students to come in and do their own cooking, whatever they might need as well.
To me, being an entrepreneur means to educate the future and to impact the future. I think that it has allowed me to jump outside of my comfort zone and learn how to be my own boss and trust myself, because I have to make the decisions for this company along with my partners. And so I feel like through the work that we're doing, we're educating the future about their food systems and their purchasing power. I think that Spartans will jump out of their comfort zone and they will make a change and they will do what really drives them.
Another faculty member, Robert Montgomery in Fisheries and Wildlife, who runs a lab at MSU called RECAP, which conducts research on the ecology of carnivores and their prey, talked about the Snares to Wares project. He presented on his research in East Africa, where people use wire snares to trap animals for food, but unfortunately a snare doesn't know the difference between an antelope and a lion or elephant, and a lot of animals, including protected or endangered animals, get maimed or killed by snares. I'm going to share a brief video about the project, but please know there are some images that show brutality against animals, and you may want to fast forward through the next minute or 2.
I'm Robert Montgomery from the College of Agricultural and Natural Resources at Michigan State University, and this is...
My name is Tuchila Mudumba. I'm a graduate student in the RECAP lab.
We're looking for a 3-legged lion called Butcherman. Won't you join us?
Butcherman was part of a coalition of 2 males in the Delta Pride in Murchison Falls National Park. He was a confident male who ruled for less than a year when he was caught in a wire snare. I was part of the team who helped amputate part of his back left leg, and we all thought that would end his reign. But against all the odds, Butcherman continued to rule his pride despite having only 3 legs. He had a will to go on that no one had ever seen, fathering many cubs and staying as a dominant male for 3 years. Any lion who could remove Butcherman would have killed his cubs and reduced the number of lions in the park even more.
Wire snares are indiscriminate. They are intended to catch antelope for bushmeat, but any animal unlucky enough to step in one can fall victim. Elephants who get their trunks caught in a snare can lose the prehensile end of their trunk, making it almost impossible to feed. Giraffes can lose a foot or a leg and be unable to move around to find food. And even animals who are lucky enough to escape from a snare can be scarred and disfigured in many other ways. Why would someone put snares out in this landscape? Some people who live outside the national park are impoverished, and the cost of meat in the markets is more than they can afford. But those men see no border in many ungulate animals inside the park, so they load hundreds of wires into canoes, paddle out onto the River Nile, and try to enter the park. They risk being capsized and attacked by hippos or crocodiles in the water. If they make landfall, they move along game trails where they risk being trampled by elephants or buffalo. They could encounter leopards, hyenas, or lions, or they could be arrested by national park rangers patrolling the park. All this for a success rate of less than 1% to bring meat to market that carries less than 1/3 the value of domestic protein.
This is the exact type of activity that we're concerned about. We can see 2 boats in the hippo pool, overloaded with men. They're pushing very, very deep into the hippo pool in a place that's very shallow water. It looks as though they're trying to get close to the shore. Why would fishermen go onto the shoreline? It's a very dangerous spot here because hippos can easily capsize a boat and kill the people that are in the water. And so you have to wonder why fishermen would be doing something so dangerous. So we're concerned about this activity in the region, especially given how many lions have been caught in wire snares.
And this is an example of a snare here.
Yeah, this is a wire snare. You'll see on one end it has got a loop in which the other half must have broken off an animal.
Right.
So this is a used tire wire, so it was part of a tire.
So this is part of a tire on a vehicle.
Right.
That has been taken and used for snaring, and this has been broken off, so we can assume that an animal was caught in this snare and was able to get free.
Yeah, most definitely, because this has been fastened hard enough, so this was pulled tight on one end and broken off.
This is how the 3-legged lion butcherman lost his lower left hind leg. You can imagine the type of damage that would do to an animal when it's pulled tight, constricted around their leg over time. The amazing thing about these particular snares is that while it might look like disused material, this has value. Tutillo has been leading a program called the Snares to Wares Initiative, which takes these snares from the landscape, which can do so much harm for the wildlife, brings them to a village on the periphery of the park, which is called Pakwach, and provides them to a group of boys who were formerly poachers, who are able to convert these into goods for sale in the market. It's a fantastic story of community-based conservation.
We are going to take this very piece of wire, hand it over to the Lost Boys group that are involved in the craft business. And you see by yourselves how this will be turned into a very beautiful piece of art.
He showed some beautiful final products of artwork made from the snares in his update at the second Entrepreneurial Roundup. You can see a local artisan working on a piece here. From May 2019 to March 2020, there is a Snares to Wares exhibit at the Detroit Zoo. There's some really exciting entrepreneurial projects being launched and moved into the world at MSU right now, and these are just 2 of them. I want to talk a bit about collaboration, and collaboration specifically in the context of places and spaces. In Western culture, when we think about artists, we might bring to mind images like this, or this, or this. When we think about writers as creatives, we might bring to mind images like this. Generally, we have a very historic and romantic notion of art, authorship, and creativity. We have a lone man. He's sitting at a desk, maybe a candle burning, perhaps a glass of bourbon at his elbow. He's toiling alone at his craft. He's a creative genius. His creativity is an individual, isolated act. I think this stereotype also applies to other fields beyond writing and art. And I don't think these notions really correctly capture creativity as we enact it today in our personal or professional lives. Technology is changing professional contexts and more have transformed how we're creative. The spaces in which we work and create look more like this, and this, and this, and this, and more recently like this. So how people work and write and create and design look a lot different today. And none of the entrepreneurs we've read about have worked in isolation. All of the people and all the projects we've explored thus far have been collaborative ventures. As for places and spaces, unfortunately in college you experience a lot of spaces that aren't particularly well designed to foster collaboration, creativity, or innovation. A lot of our classrooms have desks locked in rows, putty-colored walls, horrible lighting, and an inherent focus on the professor. Who, based on this room design, should always be at the front of the class and should always be lecturing at students. Quite a few of our classrooms look almost no different than classrooms looked 100 years ago. In this case, more than 100 years ago. Although, admittedly, most classrooms include some instructional technology, like a computer the professor can present from, and in some, the chairs are plastic instead of wood. And thankfully, you can't smoke in classrooms anymore. Our computer labs usually follow this design model. Computers in rows, the focus on the front of the room, and little room to move around and collaborate. That said, MSU has a handful of amazing spaces I briefly talked about earlier in class, designed to foster innovative, creative, and entrepreneurial work. And I hope you think about and look at these spaces a little bit differently in the context of Creativity Quest 3. Collaboration is necessary across all entrepreneurial projects and work, and collaboration requires space. These spaces might be digital or they might be physical, space to move, space to share, space to see each other, space to create. I want to focus on physical spaces here. I hope we can soon gather in these spaces sometime soon again. 3 great spaces that support collaborative work are first, the Hub, MSU's brainstorming and innovation studio. Last spring, folks at the Hub took the campus-wide lead on helping the entire MSU community transition to online teaching. And as for its physical space in Wells Hall, the space is great for brainstorming sessions for big groups and smaller groups and for presentations. And the Hub also has some of the Snares to Wear's artwork on display. The second place on campus is the main library, which has a new makerspace on the second floor, west side. There are tons of tools there, including 3D printers, laser and vinyl cutters, and more. You can check out technology you might need, for instance, a DSLR camera to shoot and edit a video to promote your entrepreneurial idea. The main library also hosts a new digital scholarship lab on the same floor as Make Central. There are a handful of great meeting spaces and rooms which you can reserve online for individual or group work. We have a virtual reality lab and tools and an immersive 360 experience lab. And finally, just north of campus, and I've talked about this in class before again, is Spartan Innovations, which is home to the Hatch, which is an amazing space to get hands-on support for your startup. The Hatch is a co-working space for students working on entrepreneurial projects. Let's head beyond MSU spaces. Think about what we've read and learned about Blake Mycoskie, the founder and chief shoe giver of Tom's Shoes. Mycoskie was stunned when he found out that many people, especially in developing countries, lack shoes. He met a woman who worked with a volunteer group that held shoe drives in the U.S. to collect and send shoes to people in need. He paired with another guy he knew, and together Tom and Alejo started researching sustainable shoe production in Argentina. He came back to the U.S. to bounce ideas off of friends and colleagues. And on his path to more conscious, attentive capitalism, he worked, collaborated with, and led teams of people, and his company reflects this collaborative spirit. If you look for photos, read articles about, or watch videos by Tom, you see people working together. And this is Blake Mycoskie's office in LA, designed not just with a huge desk for him to sit behind, but rather with a living room feel that invites people to share, to talk, and to collaborate. So let's move from talking about space and collaboration more specifically to creative space design. And let's stay at Tom's and talk about their headquarters. You will not find any cubicles at Tom's. They have a slide from the 3rd floor down to the 1st and lots of shelves with games and resources to keep people's brains engaged. They have a really open floor plan, which is modular and allows people to move around and, more importantly, see and hear each other. And of course, they have some closed meeting rooms for quiet space or private meetings. Being in LA, they have a lot of outdoor space, including ping pong tables and picnic tables for people to eat and work to keep their bodies moving. Another space regaled as incredibly creative is YouTube's headquarters. YouTube is owned by Google, and their larger holding company is Alphabet. I had a chance to visit YouTube's headquarters a couple of years ago when I was in California doing a talk at Santa Clara University. And at the time, my brother's wife was an instructional designer for YouTube's Creator Academy. They generally don't allow photos in YouTube, so most of the photos I'm sharing here came from official spaces on the web. But I can guarantee these are actual spaces at YouTube's headquarters. Here's a view from one of the YouTube buildings from out front. And like Tom's, indoor slides. This runs from the 3rd floor down to the 1st. One of YouTube's meeting spaces. The pool inside the headquarters. They also have laptop stations set up at treadmills on every floor to promote healthy working and body movement. One of their putting greens at the headquarters. A nap pod. And one of their community kitchens. And there's at least one fully stocked mini kitchen like this on every floor at YouTube's headquarters. There are also several restaurants available where employees can eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And there are cafes on almost every floor staffed with at least one barista. So YouTube is an easy example because the headquarters were built around and put into practice approaches for building creative space, including YouTube using the book Make Space, which we're reading from this week. Human beings react to the space that we're in and the things around us. Space matters, and it matters pretty profoundly in terms of what happens in that space. What sort of collaborating, imagining, innovating, prototyping, brainstorming, or more that the space does or doesn't facilitate. So for this week, we're going to start our readings about space and creativity with a brief article by Donald Ratner on how to use the psychology of space to boost your creativity. Our second reading is a short piece by Tracy Brower, where she shares ideas about inspiring spaces. Our third reading is, as I just mentioned, a collection of pieces from the book Making Space. And I've included some design considerations, creative suggestions, and lots of good examples, all of which should be pretty inspirational and helpful as you continue working on Creativity Quest 3. We have one case for the week, and it's photos of 40 inspiring workplaces of the famously creative. And we have one spark for this week, and it's a Portlandia skit called Bad Art, Good Walls.